Welcome to General Conference Review, the podcast where we provide peanut gallery commentary and sometimes thought-provoking analysis of the semi-annual General Conference of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Hosted by a team of experienced and professional individuals.
Well, maybe not professional, more like average, like very average and kind of knowledgeable.
Our podcast offers an average Joe's insight and reflections on the teachings and doctrines presented during the conference.
But we don't stop there. We also encourage our listeners to review the conference talks for themselves in order to gain the fullest understanding and benefit from the messages shared.
As a Christian podcast, we strive to create an engaging and informative experience for listeners of all backgrounds, drawing on the desire to follow the prophets and apostles, which offer a unique perspective on the teachings of Jesus Christ.
Join us as we explore the latest teachings and messages from the leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and dive deep into the spiritual insights that can be gained from studying the words of the prophets.
Hello and welcome back to General Conference Review. Joining you is myself, Todd Bruce, and we got Kevin Beamer on the line. Kevin, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing lovely. It's a lovely, lovely evening to be able to hang out with my good buddy Todd.
It's a nice, warm, wintry day up here in British Columbia, Canada. It's raining the last couple of days, which is a little bizarre. But you know what? If it was 2 degrees colder, it'd all be snow. So just take it when it comes.
Yeah. Definitely makes roads a little bit slick, but we can do with a little bit of warmer weather.
I can see my driveway, which is the first time I've seen that in a month almost. But today we are talking about Tithing, Opening the Windows of Heaven by Elder Neil L. Andersen. He gave this on a Saturday afternoon session. And as you can guess, pretty much the whole talk is going to be discussing tithing. And the blessings of it and the benefits of it and the why we're asked to do it and what the benefits that come to the world because of what we are able to offer. He starts and he talks about he has some stories about a friend in Venezuela and some of the issues that they had and the miracles that they were able to see. And then he dives into tithing. He says, all that we have and all that we are comes from God. As disciples of Christ, we willingly share with those around us. With all the Lord gives to us, He has asked us to return to Him and His kingdom on earth 10% of our increase. I don't think it's like rocket surgery for most people. What tithing is and how to pay it. It becomes a debate. How you pay it and what you pay it on and what do you consider your increase? And, I get to do tithing declaration and this comes up pretty much every week depending on who's in the office. But, and I just remind people that it's an individual thing. It's between you and the Lord. And it's what constitutes increase or how you pay your tithing. Like some people pay it on the last day of the year. Some people pay it on the monthly. Some people pay it every paycheck. My dad, he used to take what he made last year and divide it by 24 and pay that. And I said, well, great, you're a full tithe payer for last year. You're only a year behind. I used to always tease him, but anyway, it worked. Basically, that's roughly what he would make this year, right? What he made last year. But
yeah.
Anyway, it's just how we did it, and it worked. As opposed to he was a shift worker, so he'd get different pays depending on how many shifts he worked that pay period. But he just found if you divided it up, it made it a consistent payment, and it was easier. And
the way that we do tithing, since we're off on this tangent, is whatever pay gets put into my bank account, I take 10% and I put it into a savings account called Tithing, and then I pay it monthly or whenever I remember to. So it just good. Immediately goes into a bank account, 10% done.
I'm impressed. I'm so bad. I have to pay tithing 2 days before I get paid. I have to go in, hit that so that it comes out
within a couple days.
Payday or the day after payday, and it just isn't an issue. It's done.
There you go.
just because it burns a hole in my pocket and I'm going to spend it. But I tried doing a different account one time and I was like, oh, I need winter tires. Oh, but we need this or we need that. And I'm like, tithing money's sitting right there. I'm like, can't do it. Got to pay it.
Yeah, it is funny though, because as it gets bigger, because you forget to pay it or something, you start to think those thoughts, right? It's really funny. And tithing such a weird blessing, right? Because going back to Malachi 3:11, where it says, and I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes, and he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground, neither shall your vine cast her fruit before the time in the field, saith the Lord of hosts. But those blessings, specifically that one, is so open that you can't like pinpoint things to tithing sometimes. Yeah. So it's interesting.
Oh, it is. And I tell people all the time in the office and outside the office that I've never been so broke in my life as when I haven't paid tithing. And it doesn't make sense. I'm a logical guy. You take 10% away from what I currently have, I should have less, right? If you add 10% back into what I can spend, I should have more, like logically. Yeah. But when I don't pay tithing, I just seem to be more broke. I seem to be more, paycheck to paycheck. I seem to be more, things are breaking down or just what it is. And so it's like, I can't afford not. And I've seen so many blessings in my life about paying tithing that it just can't deny that paying tithing is, there are blessings from it and there's benefits from it. And there's, from a purely being blessings greedy, tithing is got a huge benefit.
Well, and just going back to that first sentence that you just read, where he said, all that we have and all that we are comes from God. As disciples of Christ, we willingly share with those around us. And I like that he introduces that before he talks about tithing, but that's a kind of a deep sentence. As disciples of Christ, willingly share with those around us. That's an interesting, as part of our discipleship of Christ, like, I don't think I'm there. I am somewhat temperamental sometimes about what I'm sharing with those around me. So
yeah, it's hard. The natural man really comes out when I'm in the office and somebody comes to me needing help, and I really want to be like on their case a little bit. But anyway, we jump through the hoops. We make sure that like we're being reasonable with the Lord's money, and I just it's hard not to be judgmental when you look at somebody else and they got the car payments and they got all the things, and then now they can't afford groceries, and it's like you kind of done this to yourself a little bit, but still we're not asked to be judgmental. We're asked to judge righteous judgments. But I had an instance recently, and I was able to go to the grocery store with a individual who is a recent convert, and kind of working through tithing and working through that ask, and and I was able to just say, like, after it was all done, to say this is possible because of like tithing and fast offerings, and people, like, when the going's good and you're paying tithing, then you help people, and when you're struggling, this is made available because people have paid into it, and they really were like, oh, okay, now this is real. This it's not just about the money; it's about like the what it represents and who it helps and how it helps. Anyway, it's been a neat thing a couple of times going to do stuff like that with people and being able to share, and that's more fast offerings on that end of things. But anyway, it's very similar, right?
It's interesting, since we're off tangent. Anyways, my grandmother used to actually run a church-owned orchard in my hometown where I grew up, and in BC as well. And at that time, right, that's the church had that. So if you needed help or you needed things, you would go get help, but then you'd work at the church orchard, which is really interesting, right? Like, it's just interesting how things have been done over the years and all these things. So continuing on, Elder Andersen says, the windows of heaven open in many ways. Some are temporal, but many are spiritual. Some are subtle and easy to overlook. Trust in the Lord's timing. The blessings always come. I like this because sort of going back to my point earlier is a lot of times we're like, we're not able to put outcomes to blessings or all these things. We're not able to connect the dots often.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we maybe have some spiritual enlightenment and we're like, oh, I can connect that dot, right? Like sometimes we can do that. But tithing's kind of a nebulous, these are the blessings that come from it. And there's some very good blessings that come from it. But they are definitely ones that are really easy to overlook.
Yeah. It reminds me of, and this is a tangent and it may not even be applicable, but there's a story about a guy, you mentioned the orchards, and I can't even remember what he was trying to grow. Wheat, probably. And he had like this amazing wheat strain, germ. I don't know what you call it. Anyway, and he shared it with all of his neighbors that all bordered his property. And somebody kept asking him, why do you do that? And he goes, well, funny thing about wheat or whatever he was growing is they cross-pollinate. And so when I share with everybody around me, it means that, I get a really good high quality wheat, like the bees or whatever it is that cross-pollinates this stuff. And then, then the next year when I reap my harvest, I get super high quality wheat again. And I go and make sure my neighbors all get good quality wheat to germinate their fields with. And anyway, I just thought that was an interesting that popped into my head as far as like tithing about like serving others and helping others. And it doesn't like he's aware of the direct implication or the direct support that it comes back to him. But like, if I feel like in the world or in life that there are many instances like that where things come back to us and we don't even really realize that it was something we initiated or we contributed or we provided a soft ground for which to plant a seed. Right. And gave space for something to root. Anyway, it was good.
That's lovely.
I'm gonna have to think about that a bit more and make that work in my head for a talk or something.
About how when we help each other, we help everyone.
Right,
and that's sort of
rising tide floats all boats.
And that's sort of the basis of fast offerings, which Elder Andersen talks a little bit about, the church donating a bunch of money to help provide relief to vulnerable children and others across the world. I'm talking about how fast offerings help people out to give shelter, food, clothes. And then at the very end, he says, the only permanent solution to the poverty of this world is the gospel of Jesus Christ, which I really like that. I really like that. And he's referencing in the footnotes Moses 7:18, which says, and the Lord called his people Zion, because they were of one heart and one mind and dwelt in righteousness, and there was no poor among them. And that's not just talking about physical poor, right? That's talking about poor in general, which is a multitude of things. But as we become more Christ-like, as we sacrifice and go against those natural carnal feelings and desires, it definitely changes us completely. I've seen it in my own life to varying degrees, right? When I'm willing to be like, put away the natural man, even little things, very little things, just the benefits that it has for me, for my spouse, for my children, for those in my sphere of influence. But that's a tough thing to constantly do. And I don't know about you, Todd, but lots of times I'm like, oh yeah, I'm really good at just, nope, I'm okay. I'll help out where I'm needed. And then I'll get into a habit of like, oh, I don't want to. And then you go through that, that daily repentance process where it might take you a little while before you're able to give back again. And that's okay. That's life.
That natural man really can kick our butt if we give it too much space. And it's okay to take a step back and not do all the things as well. But we have to be wary of using that as an excuse. And I've known too many good members who have used that as an excuse that I'm taking a step back. This isn't my thing. I need to take a break. I need to take just whatever, right? And then they take a step back from something, and then that becomes a regular excuse for them. And then sooner or later, they're never coming to anything. and it's unfortunate, but and I think he quotes the Apostle Paul here. He goes, "The Apostle Paul warned that the wisdom of men understands the things of men, but has difficulty understanding the things of God." And that's like 100% the natural man. That's the 100% like, not recognizing the value that we put into, say, ministering. We're not recognizing the value or necessity of attending church each week or reading scriptures. Do I really got to shut down my show, chase all my kids to the table so we can read scriptures together? Like, that sounds terrible. Some nights, right? Fight with my kids to get them to read some scriptures, and they're going to complain about it. And like, if it's not a good experience, if I'm mad and cranky with them to come read scriptures, is it going to be a good experience? And is there any benefit? But so it's about like making sure that we're recognizing why we're doing the things and doing it with the right intent and right spirit and right everything. But if we're just doing it for the sake of doing it, we're looking at it in a very worldly or natural man mentality, and not godlike. In relation to tithing, and I talk about this regularly with members. It says the world speaks of tithing in terms of our money, but the sacred law of tithing is principally a matter of our faith. Being honest in our tithes is one way we show our willingness to put the Lord first in our lives above our own cares and interests. I promise you that as you trust in the Lord, the blessings of heaven will follow. And when I do tithing declaration, this is when people ask me why we do tithing declaration. There isn't I haven't been able to find any hard and fast rule why we do tithing declaration in the handbook. Maybe it exists in there, but I have yet to find it. Beyond an opportunity for our members to identify what they paid and square away, right? And I tell them, from me, it's always interesting to see, because I do temple recommend interviews with people regularly, and I ask them the question: are you a full tithe payer? I ask them, are you honest in your dealings with your fellow man? Are you honest in all, or do you obey the law of chastity, or do you obey the word of wisdom? It's basically asking them, are you reading your scriptures, saying your prayers, you're doing the things? And they can say whatever they want to me, and it's up to me to use the spirit of discernment to like question if I feel there's something off. However, the one thing that we can double check on is tithing. If they say they're a full tithe payer and I happen to know they're not, that's something that I can say, well, hold on, I've done tithing declaration 3 years in a row, and every year you haven't paid any tithing, and you're declaring as a full tithe payer, and I know you work at this location. So it's an opportunity to a little bit of a checks and balances. It's just one of the few things that we can actually do that on. I can't tell you whether or not you've prayed and said your scriptures the last year, or whether or not you were honest, unless I know an exact scenario. But tithing is one of those things that I feel like can be double checked and checked on. I think it's more for members' sake, but also this is something as a ecclesiastical leader that I recognize that there are some members who will declare as full tithe payers that on their tithing settlement or their temple recommend interview, but when tithing declaration comes around, they're non-tithe payers, and so there's a discrepancy there.
But I think an important thing is to meet with members, and so something as simple as just come meet with me for 5, 10, 15 minutes, and for whatever reason, right? It's just an important thing about serving.
And I've done that with a couple, but it's almost rarely ever actually about tithing.
Yeah,
is what I've come to find out. Usually there's some other underlying thing going on. So anyway, it just, to me, it initiates a conversation and kind of points an arrow of like, hey, maybe there's something to dig in here and look at this, look at that, look at whatever. But anyway, that's one thing.
But it's also interesting, going back to that initial thing about the men have difficulty understanding the things of God, and we put this weird thing on terms of our money, right? Which Elder Andersen had also said, but all it is resource.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's really interesting. We've created this thing called money to be a placeholder for, I spent time doing this, and this time is valued at this. But everything comes from our earth originally, which was created for us 100%. Like, so there's not really an ownership. We're more stewards of the earth, is, I think, definitely how we should operate. And that should probably carry forward into our thought processes on tithing. Is, are we looking after the resources, this beautiful world that's been created for us? And are we willing to help others? And not just put it all away in our own root cellar or whatever that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a collective mindset as opposed to an individual mindset. And when we start looking at money like it's mine, that becomes a problem. And we live in a very affluent and first world
we sure do,
and we really lack for nothing. And yes, things cost money and things are it's challenging, but it's not like when you start looking at what our needs are mostly met. Mostly our wants are being challenged right now, and it's anyway. It's not that it's a big deal, but it really isn't when in the grand scheme of things with some of the things going on in the world. It isn't that big of a deal. Anyway, tangent. Oh, that's like my third tangent. So I've hit my quota. He continues. He talks about tithing in those days. Jesus talking about give unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, give unto God the things which are God's. He adds, in our day, the Lord reconfirmed the divine law of tithing, declaring, quote, "This shall be the beginning of the tithing of my people, and they shall pay 1/10 of all their interest annually, and this shall be a standing law unto them forever." And unquote. And that's just answering my question about tithing declaration. We do it because it's a commandment of Jesus Christ. We pay 1/10 of their interest annually. And it's just a checks and balances to make sure we're doing what Jesus Christ has asked us to do right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty simple. Love it. I don't really have anything to add.
I tend to overcomplicate it with my with my OCD head, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. He continues with a story about our previous prophet. I want to say future prophet, but that's not accurate. It says, President Gordon B. Hinckley recounted this childhood experience. When I was a boy, I raised a question with my father concerning the expenditure of church funds. He reminded me that mine is the God-given obligation to pay my tithes and offerings. When I do so, my father said, that which I give is no longer mine. It belongs to the Lord, to whom I consecrate it. His father added, what the authorities of the church do with it need not concern you, Gordon. They are answerable to the Lord, who will require an accounting at their hands. Now, this is an interesting statement, because there's definitely a lot of truth here. But there's also definitely a tough thing that we have with this accountability of, I want to make sure my offering spent properly. Right? Like, so we have that in us, and a lot of us search for that. I'm an accountant, right? Like, definitely think like, well, I'd kind of like to know that it got spent on the right stuff. But it makes me, going along with this idea, this principle of whatever I've offered to the Lord, that's my offering. And hopefully he perfects that offering. But I also go back to like the atonement, where Christ offered this atonement, this wonderful, beautiful thing. And so many people are just like, I don't really care for this atonement. He's not going around and being like, what did you do with this atonement? Right? Like at some point there will be a record.
What did you do with my sacrifice?
Yeah. And so sometimes we're going to do a sacrifice for someone, and it'll be like casting pearls before swine. And that's okay. But the principle itself of, I've done my part, I've put it in the Lord's hands, I need to just let it go. That's a true principle across the board, not just associated with tithing.
Yeah, absolutely. I read I don't know if it was a story and I'm going to butcher, I don't know who said it. It was Vaughn J. Featherstone or an earlier apostle before my day anyway.
You just made that name up.
Vaughn J. Featherstone, yeah. He's a character in a book I read. No, he's an apostle. He was an apostle in like the 70s and 80s.
Okay.
And I mostly know him because he wrote a letter that ended up in the Atlanta temple that was supposed to be opened like 100 years after or maybe 50 years after the temple was dedicated. And 50 years after the temple was dedicated would have been like 2032. And in the letter it says, by now you've seen the second coming of the Lord. And so everyone reads that and is like, oh my goodness, Vaughn J. Featherstone. But he wasn't an apostle at the time when he wrote it. He was a 70, I believe, which, like, not to nitpick, but like he later became an apostle. But like, you know, if you're not an apostle when you say something like that, you can't really speak as an apostle or prophet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Vaughn J. Featherstone, I believe, had this other story where he asked everybody in like a state conference. It was a priesthood meeting, and he goes, "Brethren, I want to show of hands who here would die for the Lord." And like every hand shot up. We'd all die. And he goes, "Okay, by show of hands, who here is a full tithe payer?" And like half the hands kind of went down. He goes, "See that, brethren? The majority of the people in this room would rather die than pay their tithing." And I just was like, hilarious. Oh dang, yeah, when you put it like that, it really shouldn't be that big a deal. But anyway, it's it's tithing stuff, and you can extend that to, you know, doing their ministering, really. You know, more, you know, ministering is usually a battle to get people to understand what it's about and have them do it. But
well, along those lines, we definitely deal with that thought process, though, of we do die for our loved ones, we would sacrifice for our loved ones, but sometimes our loved ones just want us to hang out with them. But that's way too much work.
Yeah, they want. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I'll work hard. I'll pay for my daughter to do this, for my kid to do that. I'll provide the support. But I'm just too tired to live for you.
Can you give me 20 minutes? I can't play a card game with you right now. And then like 3 hours later, you're like, oh, I forgot to play a card game with him.
Yeah. I need to play on my phone.
Yeah. He jumps into generous tithes and offerings. He talks about like there's 71,000 missionaries serving in 414 missions. Right now, I don't know what it is American, but Canadian, it's like $400 Canadian a month, which is like almost free to live. Like, yeah, if you're a single guy, like even if you're going to school, it costs way more than $400 a month. So to go on a mission, it's heavily subsidized. Currently, there's 177 temples in operation, 59 more currently under construction or renovation, and 79 more are in planning and design. Your tithes and offerings are allowing the blessings of the temple to be in places only the Lord could foresee. There's 300,000 congregations housed in thousands of chapels and other facilities in 195 countries. Because of your faithful tithes, the church is being established in faraway places you may never visit, among righteous saints you may never know. And you know that hits a little bit when you think about it. When you think about like the buildings that we've been in that we've had for 40 years, and they didn't get built here for free. They cost money then, and now like they're building things like crazy all over the world, and it's because of the tithing that gets like. Does the church need my tithing? Seems like they're doing pretty well. But when you really recognize that what that tithing constitutes and what it ends up helping, it becomes less of a burden and more of a joy to help. So many people benefit from it, even if I don't know them.
Well, and it's interesting along that storyline, right? We want our money to be used properly. Our money, which isn't true, I understand. We want the Lord's money to be spent properly, blah, blah, blah. But my parents, when my home ward got an actual chapel, like people put money in.
Yeah.
So like that's the generation before me.
Yeah. Well,
I would, if somebody was like, oh yeah, we want to update your stake center, Kevin, I'd be like, not with my money.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
Yeah, when Spire was built,
it's really interesting.
When it was built, it was something like $1.5 million back in 1980 or 83.
Yeah. Okay.
And the local members were expected to raise 10% of that.
Yeah.
So this is in 1980, 80 to 83. So
that's a lot of money.
That's like $4 million now. So if you asked our local ward to raise $400,000, like we'd do it, but it would be a pill, and it would be a lot of heavy lifting by a lot of people. But it would, anyway.
Of all the words, yours might be able to do it though.
That's because I'll threaten them with talking to them to death.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. But no, that's not what's done anymore. So it's interesting. He also goes on to talk about how we have 5 institutions of, post-secondary higher learning that have more than 145,000 students, and then they have all these institute and seminary classes, which are funded through tithing.
And you remember, you're the same age as me. Do you remember when the Perpetual Education Fund came in?
I do remember that, yeah.
And it was such a popular thing. They got so much money in that program. It's now self-sufficient.
That's pretty
5 years ago, they came out and said, quit donating to this thing. We have enough money. We're doing okay.
Yeah.
Just
explain what that is, Todd, quick.
Well, the Perpetual Education Fund is if you're from a third world country and you don't have opportunities to go to schools, go to wherever, or you don't have a great job, you can apply with the church for the Perpetual Education Fund, and it basically is student loans. It's interest-free student loans. So you get to go to school either within your country, or you get to go to school wherever is agreed upon for you to go to school. Once you get your degree, you end up with a reasonably decent or better job, and then you have a better life for you and your family, and you have a better income stream, and you can then pay back the interest-free student loans through the church. And it's an effort to help buoy or lift up the stakes of Zion in areas that are struggling. It's a way to try and help uplift, and it's an inspired program. And the fact that 20 years after it was instituted, it's self-sufficient and self-sustaining now is amazing. And then now they have BYU Pathways, which is like a ridiculously reduced cost for getting your degree. And I'm not sure how many countries that serves, but I know we have people in our ward who are doing BYU Pathways degrees, and they're loving it.
And it's open to lots of things. So that Perpetual Education Fund, it's not just like standard schooling. I think if you go to the website, it talks about education to gain skills that are locally in demand. So it's definitely highlighted at these places where a little bit can help.
Yeah, it's maybe more you can get a certificate to help you just do something better as opposed to like a full-on degree. Yeah, good. It's all good. I think any level of education helps. Yeah, and the money aspect of education really is a inhibitor for a lot of people, and this takes that away. He does add. He goes, the spiritual power of the divine law of tithing is not measured by the amount of money contributed. For both the prosperous and the poor are commanded by the Lord to contribute 10% of their income. The power comes from placing our trust in the Lord. And that's it. It's not about who pays. Nobody's paying more. You're paying what's reasonable to you, right? It's 10% of your income. It's everyone's feeling that pinch or that sacrifice or that sanctification equally, even though one might be paying, 10 times the amount of the other one. It's equal to what you're able to contribute. And it's you'll be blessed for it, no matter, regardless of your level of income.
Yeah, and it's tough because we know that life can be a struggle. It can be very hard to get by overall. But one of the things I love to go back to is the purpose of the plan of salvation. The plan of happiness is for us to grow and become better. Mm-hmm. And what's really terrible is we have to go through things in order to grow. And so sometimes tithing might be that to us. That might be us going through something in order to grow.
Yeah. Everyone has a different thing that's going to push them.
Yeah. He continues way towards the end of the talk under God's important work section. He says, "My brothers and sisters, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is out of obscurity, bringing remarkable blessings across the earth. There will be those who cheer us forward and those who do not. I have thoughts of the words of the wise Gamaliel," ooh, I butchered that, "who, upon hearing of the miracles of the apostles Peter and John, warned the council in Jerusalem. Let these men alone. For if this work be of men, it will come to naught. But if it be of God, ye cannot overthrow it, lest ye be found even to fight against God." Which is lovely, right? Like, it's actually a really good principle to live by in general.
Yeah, I think it's
don't worry about
wise. Yeah,
don't have anxiety about this. It'll either come to fruition or it won't. And if it doesn't come to fruition, what? You didn't need to worry about it. And if it does, just deal with it then. Yeah.
I had a friend tell me he went to I can't remember what I don't know if it was a Baptist or evangelical church one time with a friend, and he said they had their their service, and then they had a class after, and he goes, and half of that class was sitting around bashing other religions. Mm-hmm. And he finally put his hand up and he goes, "When are we going to talk about Jesus Christ? When are we going to talk about the Bible and get into the doctrines, and like, are we just going to sit here and bash other religions this whole time?" And he goes, "Oh, this is like pretty normal. Like, you name one religion that doesn't bash other religions." And he's like, "The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints." like that's the church I go to, and we never talk about other religions in our worship services about like anything they're doing wrong. They're all pushing forward. They're all hopefully trying to do the right things, and draw closer to Christ and help their people to be better. But this is what, to me, is such an important principle, that like, if we're all pulling together, let's get off each other's back a little bit. And now, if somebody's not pulling the same direction we're pulling, let them do their thing, and it'll burn itself out if it's not of God.
Well, just going along those lines, I've definitely been in meetings in our church where people have bashed other religions or right. Like, this is a normal thing, but it's not necessarily an acceptable thing.
Yeah.
In those points, it's like, that's not why we're here. We're here to edify, uplift, instruct, and that we don't have to bash other people. And there's truth everywhere.
Yeah.
I get a kick out of some things because you and I very much, we think that our Father in heaven is more loving than most people seem to attribute. And I get a kick because, like, if you're a good person and you try to follow after Christ and you get to the end and you're in this judgment and he's like, "Well, did you believe that I was the literal son and that I was a separate being?" Well, you're not getting through. Like, come on. There's some really silly things that we focus on where it's just like the gospel principle of becoming Christ-like. There's a lot of things that aren't as front and center as we sometimes make them.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to add, we had an experience, this is probably 20 years ago now in our ward, or in our town. We had a new preacher come to town, take over the ministry and the next church over. And in his first or second sermon, he decides he's going to start, bashing other religions. And the congregation allowed him to finish, but like at the end, many people went up and talked to him after and just said, "That's not going to float. It's a small community. We all get along very well. They're good, God-fearing people, blah, blah, blah," and like basically reprimanded this guy. And
that's hilarious.
And he lasted, I think, another year or two before he moved on. But anyway, we'd heard about that through the grapevine, and we were grateful because, like, it speaks volumes when people defend you when you're not there.
Yeah.
And it was good. So yeah, there's good people everywhere, but we just need to, let's pull together. Let's do the things. He continues. He goes, "You and I are part of God's important work upon the earth. It will not come to naught, but will continue to move across the world, preparing the way for the Savior's return. I testify to the words of President Russell M. Nelson, quote, 'In coming days, we will see the greatest manifestation of the Savior's power that the world has ever seen. Between now and the time he returns, He will bestow countless privileges, blessings, and miracles upon the faithful, unquote. And I would leave you with this thought. Tithing is an important principle. It's not the only principle in the gospel of Jesus Christ, but it is an important principle in helping us to humble ourselves, sacrifice, and sanctify ourselves to help us to become humble, meek, submissive, willing to do all things that the Lord has for us, so that we may be saved at the last day. And we won't be there. We will not be the only church represented in those days. When the Savior returns, there will be many religions there. There will be many great people there. But we need to do our part, and we need to make sure we're doing what we need to do in order to be there, and that is being humble and obedient. And leave those thoughts with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I've got nothing to add, Todd. Great finish. Love you, buddy.
Thanks, bud.
Have a lovely holiday.
Hey, have a great Christmas.
Bye.
See you, buddy.
Thank you for tuning in to General Conference Review. We hope you've enjoyed our in-depth analysis and commentary on the latest conference talks from leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. If you enjoyed our podcast, please consider subscribing and leaving us a review.
But please remember, there is no substitute for your own personal study of the conference talks. We encourage you to read and ponder on these messages and to share your own insights and experiences with loved ones, friends, neighbors, and apply the teachings to help you become a better disciple of Christ.
Together, we can deepen our understanding and appreciation of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Thank you again for joining us on General Conference Review. We look forward to continuing the conversation with you in future episodes.